Doing well, and welcome back to yet another live stream. It's been a while, but I thought given the occasion we just had behind us last night, it will be a good time to pick up yet another live stream. And really just want to kind of run through what happened last night, look at the markets, how the election obviously impacted various asset markets around the world, and give you a bit of my thoughts as well around the topic going forward, what potentially might be interesting to invest in and which areas maybe to avoid. And of course, as always, in the end, if we have any questions, happy to answer some of them at least. So hopefully you got some sleep last night. It was funny, even my mom was writing me in the middle of the night. I'm still watching and following what's happening, while I personally was sleeping very peacefully at night. I wasn't really too bothered about it. I'll come to this a little bit later because while I'm generally interested in politics, ultimately I concentrate on things I can control, and that's one thing I can't really control, right? I'm neither American nor does my little vote make a difference if I had to vote. So but ultimately it is what it is. And it was funny, when I woke up this morning, even before reading the news, I have the Bitcoin price and stocks ticker widget on my phone. I saw the price for Bitcoin and I knew exactly who was the winner. And well, afterwards, when I started reading it, you've all seen it by now. We have obviously a decision, which seems to be official by now, that Donald Trump is once again the president of the United States. And again, guys, I'm not a political channel, so I'm not going to discuss if he's a good guy or bad guy. One thing I will mention though, which I think sadly is really getting lost a little bit, are the nuances which we used to have in the past, where people either are Democrats or Republicans. They're this or that. It's very black and white, right? And I think we should agree or disagree with certain policies and people, but not everything is black and white, right? I think we can agree with some parts and disagree on other parts, right? We have to have a discussion. But again, I'm not a political channel. I think there are much smarter people out there. But when we look at the numbers over here, let me just update once again, but I think they haven't changed since then. It was actually a pretty decisive win, which, some, I guess, judging by the polls beforehand, wasn't that clear. Some people were saying Harris was win, then Trump. On Polymarket is a big betting page. Trump in the end was leading by far. The presidential race is decided. Again, I think there's still the race going on for the Senate and the House. So even that seems to be winning by the Republicans. So very strong performance over there, and the House as well. Again, I'm not a political expert. How many they would need here. Still, I think they're closing in on the 218 to win, as it says over here. So it seems really the Republicans swept the entire scene over there, which I suppose will help Trump in whatever way he wants to do his politics to get things done, right? Because the worst in many countries, I'm from Germany myself, is when you have many different ruling parties and nobody can really agree on anything and nothing really gets passed. And in the end, you're sort of not moving anywhere really. So for better or for worse, at least he can do what he fancies to in a certain extent. So let's see what will come out of it. So let's actually move on from that and see what's the impact on various companies and markets around the world. Now, obviously, if you've been investing already a little bit, you probably, if you checked your portfolio today, most likely in the green, I hope at least, if you invested in sort of companies that were benefiting from him. And obviously that was already mentioned quite a lot before, that he would be very good for the stock markets and crypto markets, and we'll come to this in a second. But obviously we have some really clear winners. Now, one of them obviously is his seemingly best buddy these days, Elon Musk, which, the guy was like campaigning. I think he was more the vice president than this JD Vance guy, because he was really at every rally. He was pumping money in there. How much he said over here? I think he contributed, over $100 million. So really a lot. Now, obviously, I'll show you in a second the numbers. Tesla definitely, at least today, in the short term, has benefited big time. And he seems to be really, the President Trump, a big supporter of Elon Musk. So I'm sure we'll see more synergy, partnership, which should normally result in very favorable Tesla prices going forward. together with SpaceX, of course, and many other of his projects that he has in companies. So yeah, I think if you are a Tesla investor, you definitely would have benefited. It was funny, just today on the lift going up to my apartment, I met one guy and he was, I could see a bit stressed. We spoke about the election and so on. He said, yeah, you know what? I just sold my Tesla shares last week and I'm so upset. It was like tens of thousands that I missed out on. But hey, that's investing, right? And sometimes you lose some, you win some. In terms of banks, I was quite interested and surprised to see that, to be honest, that they jumped so much. When you see over here the US banks, they really benefited a lot. Obviously, the hope is, I suppose, or what investors are pricing in, that he will go easy on the lowering of the interest rates. Now, as you know, central banks around the world in recent times have really started lowering the interest rates, right? Because inflation comes down, they're lowering the interest rates, which generally is less favorable to banks, right? Because in the times of high interest, they had some really good times. So I think investors are expecting that Trump will slow down the increase. I don't think he will increase the interest rates, but he might be, in a way, come up with favorable policies to, potentially benefit and increase the bank's profits going forward. We shall see, but yeah, it was interesting to see such an increase over there in prices. Another very interesting industry that is very much affected by the decision of Trump or the fact of Trump being president, once again, is defense spending, and especially in European defense companies. Now we remember, when he was president before, he really pushed NATO countries to contribute more of their GDP, national GDP, towards national defense, right? There's, I think, the 2% target, which those countries should spend or allocate of their GDP towards national defense. Some of them have done so, some of them haven't. But either way, now that we see, Trump potentially pulling out some of the resources from Europe and less support, let's say, to obviously Ukraine in their defense and so forth, now we see immediately that investors believe, European defense companies probably have to produce more themselves, less reliant on the US, and therefore people betting on that. So that's really interesting thinking. And to be honest, I can follow that logic. I don't directly invest in defense companies, but I can understand the logic behind it, right? Because you would understand that they have to become more self-reliant, and therefore obviously more European countries will order from such defense companies based in Europe, and they will, as such, increase their revenue. So, really interesting thinking over there for people who would have sort of expected that. I'm sure they could have had some nice returns from that. And of course, oil and gas companies, right? He is really in that very, very old school. He's super, and you see that right here in terms of losers. He is really against renewables, green energy and all these things. He really is quite against that, which is, quite a statement. Again, you may like it or not, but that's just how he sees the world. And therefore, we've seen oil and gas really benefiting from it. And renewables, I'll show you in a second the numbers when we go through the actual stocks. They've been really hammered. Now, that's a very short term, right? That's one day after the election, right? Long term, it might average out and so forth. But definitely they have been taking a big, massive hit, which is really something to keep in mind. And of course, in terms of tariffs, I mean, he is really pro-tariffs. We'll come to it in a second, but he was recently at the Joe Rogan podcast, and he kept on talking about tariffs. I think at some stage he even said his favorite word is tariff. So he wants to put tariff on pretty much most countries who kind of, have a strong position in the US markets, like Chinese EV manufacturers who import the cars from China to US at a very cheap cost, right? Because they have economies of scale. They can produce things way cheaper than they can in the US. So instead of trying to compete with them, he just wants to slap big, fat, juicy tariffs on them, making things, 200, 300, 400% more expensive. At which point, right, if you are a US, consumer, for you, ultimately the price matters. It doesn't matter if the thing comes from China or not. If it's, a fraction of the price you can buy a local car, well, then you're probably going to go for that. But if there's a tariff on that, that will obviously change up things. And the fear is also that he will broaden that out to companies beyond China, but also in Europe and other parts of the world. So again, remains to be seen. Sometimes he likes to make these big, bold statements. In the end, what actually gets implemented, I don't know. We shall see. But that's also something to keep in mind long term. Of course, we have 4 years ahead of ourselves. So let's see how that develops from there. Right, so let's look into some actual numbers and see how the markets are doing over here. And well, as I just mentioned, for all Tesla investors watching, congratulations. I think you had a nice day. Some juicy returns, 14% up, really, really nice. Of course, in general, when we look, if we look at the year-to-date performance of Tesla, it has been a little bit up and down. So I think we're almost back to where we started. But yeah, in the last few months, it hasn't really done too well. But yeah, when we look at the last 3 days, a very, very nice jump. So if you bought some stocks before that, well done. I think you did a smart investment. And as I said, right, I think the fact that Musk was pushing so much, he doesn't do that just because he's a nice guy. He has, incentives and long-term visions in mind as well. So I think, I would imagine that the stock price of Tesla will do rather well over the next 4 years. There will be ups and downs, but overall, I think being buddy-buddy with the president, I'm sure there will be some favorable policies coming out for him. Then we see some other big companies, of course. Let's go down to the top gainers first. And here we see a couple of them. I don't know all of them. TeraWulf, I believe that's a crypto company. Let me see the company, what they do. Digital asset technology company. So again, operating Bitcoin mining, right? So we'll speak about Bitcoin in a second. But once again, obviously, those kind of companies, Bitcoin miners, anything related in a way with cryptocurrency has seen a huge price correction upwards, right? Same with Coinbase, right? One of the biggest crypto exchange, I think the biggest crypto exchange in the US for sure, up 26%. Really huge gains over there. And then we have a couple of other companies there, but Robinhood, really interesting, up 18%. So that's definitely, those have been really benefiting what we just spoke about before, the gainers. But then we come to the losers, and here it's just really interesting. Now, to be fair, I literally hardly know any of those companies. Enphase I'm familiar with, but I don't individually invest in those. But for example, Enphase, if we go down, they are down, for the day, 17%, right? In one day. And they do, guess what they do? Sell home energy solutions, solar for photovoltaic. So basically, green energy, right? Renewables, and that's what we spoke about, right? These companies are really getting hit badly. Again, that's a short term. Hopefully, long term, they will be able to recovering because if we go back into them for a longer time period, they obviously had a good run. But the last few days, let me go to 1 year, 2 year. Well, actually, pretty flatlining. Well, to be honest, actually not a really good investment over the last 2 years, and the last few days haven't helped. So, under the Trump presidency, is that something you want to individually invest in? Well, I don't know. I personally probably wouldn't, but that's, again, something to keep in mind. With this, we come to cryptocurrency, and here, as I said, when I woke up in the morning, obviously my second biggest position in my portfolio after, real estate is obviously, in terms of total value, my biggest one. Then it's Bitcoin already. In terms of crypto, I only own Bitcoin and then my ETFs. And when I woke up, I saw a nice movement, even though as a percentage it's only 6%. But if you have a larger holding, then obviously in terms of monetary gain, it's really attractive. And really, really happy with this. Even my mom, again, she was texting me and said, oh my God, so nice to see the gains there. So we haven't obviously, when I click into this, seen for the last few months, kind of up and down swings. So I'm really happy that we finally get some good movements towards the upside. And I think honestly, he was really bullish, right? If you remember, I think he was actually the first one who really started collecting major donations in the form of Bitcoin. He has been at the biggest Bitcoin conference in the US. He was one of the speakers there. And he is really pro Bitcoin. At least that's what he said, right? Ultimately, it's not what they say, it's what they do. So it remains to be seen what is actually the real policy that comes out. But generally, you get a feeling that himself and his administration, Republicans in general, are very pro crypto in general, Bitcoin definitely, and I think they can only be good for people invested in this space. So I think long term we should see some hopefully even more gains. Again, those might re-correct a little bit in the next few days, come down. I wouldn't be surprised if we once again drop down a little bit, but long term over his presidency, I think it can only be a good thing for sure. And yeah, of course, some of the other stocks. But then interestingly, for example, Nvidia gained quite a bit, while, for example, Apple kind of flatlined over there. So in terms of individual shares, there wasn't a huge gains to be seen in many of them, except for the likes of Tesla and so forth. In terms of funds, obviously, that's what I mostly invest in, the SPY. I buy that one in London, up 2.1%, and the QQQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100, also up 2.25%. So overall, some really nice movement. I'm really glad I bought on Monday. I do my stock buys every single week, usually on a Monday, unless on Mondays it's a really green day. Then I buy Tuesday or the following day just to get a little bit of a dip. And there was actually a correction. I was thinking, I could potentially wait until Wednesday and maybe the stocks collapse, right? In case Harris would have won, I think we would have seen definitely more red numbers. And then I would have kind of regret that I missed out. But I was pretty sure that Trump would win, so I did it on Monday. So I had some nice gains from that position, what I bought on Monday. So that's always nice to see. In terms of commodities, pretty much in the red, which is interesting. Especially gold down 2.9%, which, I don't know his position on gold. I think he's in a way a bit conservative, so I don't think he has any issue with gold in particular. But I think the fact that he's so pro Bitcoin and crypto in general, there's only so much money in the world, right? So the money can either flow into that asset, that asset, or that asset. So the more people believe into crypto, that means money eventually flows out of one asset and flows into another asset. And actually, I can jump into this right now. Over here, when I show you the global ranking by assets, let me see 1 second, just pull this up over here. It's actually quite interesting because here you see, come on, let's load it up 1 second, still hanging. You see basically which are the biggest assets. Yeah, here we have it, the biggest assets by market capitalization. So basically, for a company, it's the price of the share times the number of shares in the world. Those two together give you the market capitalization. And here we see the biggest asset in the world by market capitalization continues to be gold. And obviously we've seen quite a price surge in recent times. So gold has done really well, honestly. I mean, I was never a fan of gold. I don't like gold, but I must say it did do very well in recent times. Nevertheless, when we think about, as I said, right, money has to flow into certain assets. And now I think that the world is waking up and more money is flowing into Bitcoin. The ETFs, the big ETFs around Bitcoin, with BlackRock having ETFs around Bitcoin, I think more and more money is flowing into that. And look, I mean, right now we have a price of 74,000, while Bitcoin's total market capitalization is still less than 1/10 of that of gold. So $17 trillion versus $1.7 trillion. So less than 1/10. So if you were to imagine if it would eventually match gold, right? If Bitcoin was reaching 17 trillion market capitalization, that would be a 10x from here. So that would mean, because the same amount of Bitcoin will be in supply, so that would mean a 10x in the price, which would bring the price for Bitcoin to 740,000 per Bitcoin, right? Of course, that's hypothetical thinking, but I think you get my point that I still think we have a long way to go, because sometimes people think, oh my God, it's already so expensive Bitcoin, how much higher can it go? Well, if it was to catch gold eventually, which in an ever more digital world, I don't see a reason why we still have in 50 years some brick of gold in our drawers at home. I just don't see that. But again, that might just be my view. So I think we still have a long way to go with Bitcoin, and hopefully we're just getting started on the journey. So while we're here, I can also just once again show you now the biggest companies in the US. And I don't know when, I think it was recently, that Nvidia once again flipped Apple as the most valuable company in the world, now at $3.5 trillion, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Really, really incredible. I think it must have been in the last few days with their gains. Overtook Apple once again as the most valuable company in the world, not just in America, but in the world. So all Nvidia investors, congratulations also if you invested early on. I haven't invested in them individually, but of course, as part of my S&P 500 holding and NASDAQ 100 holding, which is quite tech heavy, I have definitely seen the benefits and gains from Nvidia, which is nice, right? You passively manage that without having to individually pick winners here and there. In terms of Forex, of course, the same exchange rate. obviously because there's such now, enthusiasm behind the US with Trump. He will bring the economy, make it great again, all these things. So obviously there's a lot of excitement, which also translates to their currency. So versus the euro, it obviously, if you see it red, it actually means it's positive. So the dollar is doing better versus the euro. Overall, definitely in a strong position. Again, these things fluctuate, right? If you go over a longer time period, it goes up and down. So that's really nothing here, anything special. And I think it's just a very temporary boost there to the price of that. Moving on, just once again, I think that's something really to watch. He is really anti and green and environmental things. He even said it on his podcast with Joe Rogan, which, by the way, guys, I mean, as I said, like him or not, but he's going to be the president for the next 4 years. And I watched that interview. As you can see, it's 3 hours almost, viewed by 46 million people. I wish my videos would get a fraction of that. But either way, honestly, you really, in a sit-down interview, which is sort of manicured and, a lot of questions you get in advance, you can prepare a lot. But in a 3-hour raw talk, you really get into the head of a person. You can really start to see how that person thinks. And as I said, obviously, a lot of things I completely disagree, but some things he says actually do make sense. And I think it can have, hopefully, a positive impact on certain parts of the economy and the world, while others maybe not, right? But that's, like any person, right? You may agree with a lot of things I say, hopefully, but you may also not agree with some others. And that's totally fine, right? We have to get back to having dialogue, not just because you don't like one single thing, you cancel it immediately. Everybody cancels everyone, right? Then I think, the whole world should be canceled because nobody's perfect. So anyway, I think if you have some time, I usually listen to these podcasts in the gym. Today I was listening to the one of him and Elon. I didn't realize he had yet another one, this one over here with Elon Musk once again, that just came out a day ago. Also really inside, I just started, so I haven't heard the full one. But I really like those deep talks for such a long period because you can't, come up with the usual politician answer, right? Where they say a lot of things without actually saying anything. So I quite like that, to be honest. And again, even though I don't agree with everything Joe Rogan says and thinks, I still like the way he interviews and goes deep. And really definitely gives you a good understanding of the person. Also interesting, of course, as I mentioned, I think Europeans definitely are very much worried to see how things play out, right? Especially with regards to Ukraine, but also with regards to tariffs and economic sanctions potentially, maybe not sanctions, but collaboration with the US, right? In the past, we used to be, really good friends with each other, but then during the tenure of Trump previously, there was quite a few, as we remember that handshake over here, it wasn't the smoothest relationship, let's just say. So we will see how it turns out. But it seems this time a lot of them already congratulated him and reached out. Obviously, I think that's the smart way to go about it, right? Again, like it or not, but the US is the most powerful country in the world. So we want to be on good terms with him. And, Europe has its own strength, but we definitely need the US to continue to thrive and do well. So I think it's smart to at least play along. It doesn't mean we have to agree to everything they tell us and dictate us, but I think we want to be on the good side with them. So hopefully we'll be able to establish a better relationship this time. Right, we spoke about that. Crypto markets, once again, we touched on it briefly, but pretty much most of it in the green, which is really nice to see, of course. I don't see too many that are down. Only XRP, well, I haven't never bought XRP, but even for the year to date, down 13%. So if you invest in that, that's not too good. Dogecoin, up 113%. Still, my goodness. Wow. I mean, I think it's because also Elon Musk probably is still pushing that. I'm sure. I don't follow his Twitter channel or X channel, but I remember he used to be quite a supporter of Dogecoin. And now that he sort of, with Trump, almost won the election, I think that's why we see the benefit over there. But I'm just good old Bitcoin. I'm really happy with this. Year to date, guys, we're up 76%. I'm happy with this. And also let's keep in mind, right, as the asset matures and more people invest and the asset value grows, of course, we're going to be seeing less and less of these huge swings, right? If, let's say, Bitcoin reaches one day 250,000, maybe 500,000 one day, many years in the future, clearly we won't see any more swings of 50, 60% in a few days. And I think that's also good because it just means it matures and stabilizes, because while it's nice when it goes to the upside, don't forget, it can also swing to the downside. And when you see a 30, 40% in a matter of days in your portfolio, that's really painful. So in that way, I'm happy that I feel more stable and comfortable investing my money long-term in Bitcoin and see that grow. At the moment, I have it actually staked on my, well, you can't really stake it, but lent through my Nexo exchange, which I use. I get there now 4.5% interest on my Bitcoin holdings. So I'm really happy with this. It just kind of grows passively over time. Yeah, I thought that I saw that the graphic over here, which I also really liked, and that was obviously at the time when the Republicans won, when Trump won last time, then the Democrats won, and that was obviously done before the election outcome that we saw yesterday. But ultimately, and that just it's not applicable to Bitcoin, but I think any good asset or investment that you make, it's irrespective of the presidents and macroeconomic factors. I just want to remind you of that chart over here. That's the S&P 500, right? Since 18, what is this? 18. Can I zoom into this 1 second so you can see 1887 around. That's a long time ago. And obviously during that period, a lot of things happened, right? I mean, what is this period here? 2008, 2009, obviously financial crisis. So we had so many things happening. We had world wars during this period, so many things. And guess what? Over time, if you invest into solid things, and here you invest into the 500 biggest US companies in the world, obviously they're going to continue to thrive long term, irrespective of who's the president. Yes, some policies may be more favorable, others might be less favorable, but long term, unless the entire economy collapses, you're going to be doing well. So that's why I sometimes think people always worry. Today I got so many messages today. Should I buy this? Should I buy that? What do you think? What do you think? So unless you're trading, right, then obviously you need to pay attention to the things we spoke about, right? Like the winners, the losers, how the tariffs affect individual companies or industries. You should be really following those. But if you're a long-term buy and holder of assets like, Bitcoin, like an ETF, S&P 500, or if you want even more global diversification, buy all-world MSCI all-world ETF, that you buy a bit of everything, worldwide diversification, and you're good to go. You don't have to follow all the action. And that's why I said I slept very peacefully at night. I really didn't care who, when I woke up this morning, was the president, because I know long-term my investments are going to do well, right? I mean, I'm super happy now to see the short-term boost in my portfolio. But long-term, I'm really a long-term investor, right? At the same time, now it's more expensive for me to buy more of my shares. I just want to remind you guys, don't get too caught up on the news cycle, what they tell you should buy this, you should sell now. I think find something that you understand, that you want to invest in, and that you could see, the potential long-term. Now, obviously, industries change, right? I used to invest also in dividend shares and so on. So your own strategy might change. But as long as you find something you understand and feel comfortable with in the long term, go for it and don't try to chase, the latest short-term news and cycles. At least that's what I'm thinking. And the last point before we go into Q&A, if we have some, I'm a big fan of focusing on things that are in your control. As I said, presidential outcomes, they're not in our control, right? Yes, you may cast a vote if you are a US citizen or in your local country, but ultimately I have no choice. So why would I get upset? Why would I, spend all my time, fuming about it or speaking with the people about it? Now I'm living in Dubai, UAE, and obviously politics is really not a topic here. Now, some people may not like that because they like to discuss these things, and well, that's good for them. They can go on Twitter, I guess, to share their opinion with the world. But here, it's just not a topic. Here we talk about business, about things, self-development, your health, I don't know, anything but politics, because ultimately you can't control it anyway, right? In many ways, unless, listen, if you want to go to the street and demonstrate and cast your vote and so on, respect. I mean, that's your choice. That's not something I would want to spend my time doing. But then I could respect you because you take action. But not taking action and then complaining about it, I think is just the worst. And that's why I always say, focus on things that you can control, your mindset, your action, building a business, working harder, looking after your health, your family. These are things you can control, not the outcome of elections or many other things in the world that are beyond our control. And hopefully that makes sense. And with this, let's see if we have some questions over here. I can see already some people saying hi. Right. Let's see who's here. Pedro, nice to see you. Nobody is always right and nobody is always wrong. Absolutely. So I think it's really such a unfortunately thing that really got lost in recent times, where it's so divided. We're so divided. Everybody's so divided, right? And even like, I don't know, for me, it felt like, I shouldn't say the word, otherwise YouTube will block me, but 2020, 21, right? We all know what happened there. We had to stay at home for various things. And some people obviously, they got the thing in their body and others not. And those who got it, they were really adamant. And those who didn't get it, they said, those are not smart people. And there was such a division of people. And while we may agree on other things, just because of that point, whole friendships broke apart. And I think it's just so sad. And I think we have to start again having discussions, civil disagreements, have discussions, have an argument, but we can still agree on so many other things. And I think it's really important. So hopefully, it's not for me to change, but I think just raising awareness and having a dialogue, and even my comments, right? A lot of times I see some comments, luckily not a lot of times, but people disagree or say, well, why are you making these decisions? This is completely rubbish. I agreed with everything you said before, but this one doesn't make sense. And again, I could just delete it and say, whatever. No, I will try to at least give my point of view. That person may not agree with me, but I think at least having a dialogue and say, listen, let's disagree on this one, but let's make sure we see eye to eye on other things. And I think that's a beautiful thing, which we should embrace going forward. Dale Williams rumors that Elon Musk will be part of Trump's cabinet. I don't know. I'm not really indulging in rumors. I don't think he has physically the time to do so. I mean, the guy is running how many companies? I think he might be his spokesperson and sort of, non-official vice president. I was actually thinking what will happen in the next 4 years, right? After 4 years, because obviously Trump can't run for a third term, A, because he's too old, and B, because that would be a third term, and that's not possible unless he somehow changes, I suppose, the constitution. But generally it's not possible. So I was thinking maybe somebody like Elon Musk might potentially decide to run, right? I mean, he comes up with a lot of crazy ideas. So maybe one day he wants to run as a president. I wouldn't be surprised, to be fair. Right now that he joins the cabinet, I'm not sure about that. Fabio, it's a quick question. Considering your recent problems in Trade Republic, did you have to sell your holdings and open new position on a new broker? Good question. Yeah, so I don't know, in case you haven't seen it, yesterday I made a video about my unfortunate experience with Trade Republic, which I always recommended and still do, right? It's not like I'm bashing them and again, it goes back to the same point I just made. While I had a bad experience myself, I still think it's a great broker for many others. It just is not my fit. That's something I really want to make clear here. Now, luckily or not luckily, I didn't actually buy any shares on Trade Republic. And I never said I did. I only kept it to keep my cash over there because they really paid some nice interest. And the cool thing is I could use their card to withdraw cash over 100 euros without any fees. So yeah, since we had a lot of cash expenses this summer, since we bought our house in Lithuania, apartment, that was really handy. But I never kept my money or stocks over there, so I didn't have to sell them. So that answers your question, I guess. My wife, on the other hand, she did have quite a big portfolio with them. So we're still now looking, because apparently on interactive brokers, you can transfer it. At least they list it over there. So we'll have to see if it works. If it does, of course, it will be much better to transfer them over to interactive brokers rather than having to sell them, potentially, depending on your situation, have a taxable event, pay the tax on it, and rebuy them elsewhere. It's just not really efficient and not good way to go about that. Alex Schultz also sold Tesla 2 days ago. I'm sorry to hear that, Alex. That's painful indeed. But look, I mean, sometimes you win some, you lose some, right? Maybe you made some other smarter investments. I made a lot of dumb investments myself when I said, "Oh my goodness," when I sold before the stock took off and so forth. These things happen, right? We learn our lessons, and that's why I always keep coming back instead of trading, really to invest long term, because I tried it so many times with individual meme stocks, with dividend shares, with tech stocks, and it worked for the short term, and I was doing well, and I could flex to my friends, listen, look how much money I made. But long term, it didn't work out too well, and I just can't be bothered having to check constantly what the stock is doing. And sometimes, once again, it's beyond your control. You may invest into a company that's doing really well, For example, Tesla, right? Fundamentally, nothing has changed. Now, just because he's cronies with the new US president, all of a sudden there's such a share price boost. Plus, of course, potentially the tariffs that he will impose on the Chinese EV cars will potentially boost Tesla sales of the car back home, even though there might be a retaliation by the Chinese, so that there will be less Tesla sales in China. So let's see how it turns out long term. But listen, as I said, don't take it too serious. David says, excited for the coming months, stock market and US economy. Yeah, definitely. I think in that way, for the markets, he definitely, I personally think it's quite positive, right? There's more momentum. People are more excited about investing, about stocks, about crypto. So for that, generally, I think he's probably the better candidate. I would definitely say that. How it turns out over the entirety of his tenure remains to be seen. But I think it definitely makes things more exciting, which hopefully will bring us also exciting content for you guys to share. And as investors, will also make our portfolios greener going forward. Pedro thinks Elon will maybe change some of Trump's strong position on clean energy. Yeah, because actually that's a good point, because technically he is in a way in the green energy industry as well, right? By selling that as well. So I think he will maybe talk a bit of sense into him. And generally, that's one thing I like about Trump. He can be swayed into a certain direction. I remember initially he didn't like Bitcoin at all. Like many years ago, he said Bitcoin is useless. But he came around, and this rally showed, he benefited a lot from crypto donation and so on. And he himself made really strong statements on the future of crypto. And at least once again, that's what he said. Let's see if he actually does it in reality. But yeah, I think in that way, he's a businessman. And if he sees financial incentive of going with something, he might potentially agree to go with that. So hopefully he does. So we'll see that. Bruno, thanks very much. Appreciate the love. Very kind of you. What else? I cannot pronounce the name. Taisley. Okay, I'm not even going to try. But anyways, talking about Bitcoin, would love to see an update on Neverless when they bring in some better onboarding and transfer features. Yeah, look, on Neverless, so that's a video I did recently. It's another really interesting app that came out. Really quite a new company, I would say. And I was really impressed with them in the beginning. So obviously I worked with them. We had a deal where anyone signing up would get a welcome bonus. And I had an affiliate link, of course, as well. So I think they're still doing a great job. Just a couple of things which I didn't really like so much. For example, you can buy Bitcoin without any fees, which is awesome, right? That's cool. But then once you have your Bitcoin there collecting interest, you can't actually withdraw it, at least right now not. They said they're working on this. But that's something, I didn't really appreciate. The same, for example, with Apple Pay. They say you can use Apple Pay to do free deposits, which is awesome. I love it, But that's capped at €1,000 or dollars. So when I wanted to do more, I couldn't, because then it was over the threshold. And that wasn't mentioned before. So it's small things that I didn't really like. So I stopped using them. Once again, I still think they're doing a great job. It's still early days. Why I like Nexo in a way more, because they have been around for 6 years. And let's be honest, 6 years in crypto land, it's quite a long time, I would say. And in terms of interest, what I'm getting on Nexo, it's super attractive as well. So I'm just going to continue with them. I did make a note under the video that I'm not using Neverless myself anymore, but I know some of you are. And I still think it's a great app. It's just not for me at this stage. But if they are coming up with some new features, I'm happy to consider to make a revised video on that, of course. He did promise that, so let's see. That would be tomorrow. But again, that's probably one of his many words and sentences that he just throws out there to get some votes and so forth. Let's see. I don't think it's going to happen, but definitely interesting situation. That's of course why we see a lot of Europeans being really worried and see how the situation will play out. What else? Would like to buy... Andrea, would you buy right now any S&P 500 or even BTC considering today's big increase, or wait for volatility to settle? Yeah, I mean, look, in general, right now I'm not buying any Bitcoin because I call it my 3-pillar strategy, right? Investment strategy. I have my real estate, which right now I'm not really adding to it. I have technically 2 apartments of my own, one now with my wife together. So for now, I'm fine with that. I wouldn't want to have much more anytime soon. One day in the future, yes, but right now I'm fine with this. It's already my biggest part of my portfolio. Then in second position, I have my Bitcoin holding. And then in third only, my ETF holding, which is split into S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. And I would like that to at least be on the same level of Bitcoin, ideally on second place, and then Bitcoin on third space, because it's so concentrated. While I believe in Bitcoin long term, it is very, it is more volatile, let's be honest, than investing into 500 diversified companies. So I'm not buying actively Bitcoin right now. I do receive some payments in it. I still get the interest in it. So naturally, over time, my position is increasing. So right now, I just continue to buy S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. Of course, I wouldn't buy on a day-to-day, where we have seen 2% in for the S&P is a major gain. So I wouldn't buy on a day-to-day. But if next week it continues to be green all week long, yes, I will continue to buy, because long term, I'm just going to continue to dollar cost average, because we don't know, right? It may never go down by more than 10% for a long time at least, right? I do think we will see a major reset eventually. But who knows, for the next 1-2 years, we've been talking about recession forever, and well, we haven't seen the recession. So that way, by not being invested, you would actually be missing out quite a lot. So yeah, right now I'm not buying Bitcoin actively, just in a way passively, I suppose, but really focus on increasing my S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 positions. Rafael, so many Portuguese over here. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting, with some of the also brokers I work with. Obviously, I have affiliate links. That's usually a win-win, right? You get a welcome bonus. I get a reward from that as well. And funnily enough, they share some of the statistics with me. And very often, Portuguese are some of the highest users there. So it's really quite interesting. I have no idea why. But I think if I was ever going to do a subscriber meetup, it would either be Dubai, Vilnius, where I also live in summers, or Portugal eventually, somewhere there. So yeah, it's a beautiful place, and great to see so many of you guys here. All right, who else we have? Can you tell us more about your educational background? Did you study economics, business administration? Do you recommend studying it? No, yes and no. I studied hospitality management. So I studied that because, as you may know, I used to be a luxury hotel general manager running 5-star hotels in different countries. Lived in many countries around the world, in China, in UAE before, also in Switzerland, Lithuania. I was even, for one project, they sent me for 1 week in North Korea. So I've been really around in different places. I did my high school in New Zealand. So yeah, all around the world. So really consider myself a global citizen in that way. And so when I studied hospitality management, it did have a strong emphasis on business, naturally, right? Because if you want to run a hotel, I mean, my hotel that I had before was running in the UAE. We made $16 million revenue a year, right? So that's significant money it's like a huge business that you need to be able to run and manage. And you naturally become stronger in terms of finances, economical understanding, and so forth. By no means am I an expert, and I never say that, right? That's why I also don't give financial advice here. I'm just sharing my own journey as an investor here. What I'm doing, hopefully it will benefit some of you. You learn from my mistakes. If I do something wrong, I also share that over here, so you don't have to do the same mistake. And hopefully if I do things right, that can inspire some of you as well. So do you have to study that? Depends. I don't know your situation, if you're a student or not. If you're thinking of studying it, I think it definitely makes sense to at least have some exposure to it, to have a base understanding. I don't think you need to become a macroeconomist or an accountant to make smart investment decisions. But I think having a base understanding of how economies work, what is inflation, what is GDP, how debt works, right? So these major principles I think are important to understand. But to be fair, if you really do a deep dive on YouTube, use ChatGPT to your advantage, you can get a lot of that knowledge also without spending 4 years in in university. But if you were to study anyways and not sure what, I think it's a great topic and subject. And as I said, maybe you can do a dual major, one on your core, whatever is your passion, marketing or whatever it will be. I don't know your situation, but having a strong base in business is definitely helpful, because ultimately, right, you can be the most creative person, what have you, but ultimately you have to make money, you have to make ends meet, and having an understanding of the economy, how things work, will definitely make you a stronger candidate going forward. Carolina, do you have a few words on MicroStrategy? To be fair, not really. Let me open it up. I mean, I am not investing in them. Let me pull up, see if I can see the numbers. I'm sure they are up, definitely. MicroStrategy. Oh, it doesn't show up over here. I think that's the one over here. 1 second. Obviously, I suppose they are doing just as well as Bitcoin. If that's the one over here, Michael Saylor, yep. Why they don't show me the gains? 1 second, let me switch over. Why it doesn't load? Somehow it doesn't show me the gains, how much we're up. What is this here? Over the 1 day. Well, sadly, it doesn't show me the gains, so I don't know how much we're up for the day. I can go to Seeking Alpha to see micro. But, I think they will definitely do very well. I don't know the ticker symbol, MicroStrategy. Mega, is it Mega? Mega. Yeah, I don't know. Somehow I'm not able to pull it up. But anyway, just to get back on track. Look, for me, I wouldn't necessarily... it's the same like investing into a Bitcoin ETF, right? A lot of people like that, and I would recommend it for, people like my mom or people who are maybe not so comfortable taking self-custody of Bitcoin and so forth. That might be an easier way just to have exposure to Bitcoin. Personally, I enjoy the underlying asset. I like to own the real asset, right? It's like, buying a real apartment and house that you own, or through another company that leases it, and you have some, potential fractional shares in that company that owns the real estate. It can be a way, but I like to own the actual asset because I think that's the valuable thing. I can then personally, like I do right now, lend it out and get interest on it, right? I can use it to make payments myself, right? I literally own it. I could, in Dubai, for example, you can buy real estate with Bitcoin. One day, if I had to, I could do that, right? And I can't do that if I'm invested in a company. It's just shares now. I can sell the shares and then turn them into something else. But yeah, I think it's a great company. Michael Saylor, amazing visionary guy. I really, really appreciate him, what he's doing. Smart guy. Watch his interviews, many of them. Super deep thinker, amazing guy. Read his book, so really recommend him. But I would not personally invest in that company individually. What else do we have? Interesting question. Bruno, do you think there will be a downturn in the market for next month since Warren Buffett is going into so much liquidity? Very good question. Warren Buffett cash reserves. I was thinking the same, to be honest, because normally he is a step ahead of everybody else. I'll show you now. He's now sitting on $325 billion of cash. So that's a huge amount, So he must be knowing something. Obviously, he sold a big share of Apple stocks recently, which was one of his most profitable investments. It's really interesting to see. Maybe he expects something, a major reset, and then he will scoop up something. I have no idea, honestly. But just based on that, what could I do now? I could be scared and think, okay, maybe he knows something. Let me sell or keep more cash to invest something. He will always be a step ahead. I can only see, a few weeks later after he's done the purchase already, what he bought, and then that obviously company will boom in stock price. And usually we as individual investors, we're just chasing and we're always a step behind, so we'll not get the same returns. And so I'm not really, worried about it. I will definitely monitor it, keep an eye on it, but there's nothing I can, do with it. But definitely, good point you mentioned there, and something to keep an eye on. What else we have? I would like to keep an eye on nevertheless. Okay, since S&P, do you recommend? Nico asks, since S&P is an all-time high, would you recommend to buy if lump sum? I guess the question is, would you recommend to buy now lump sum, a bigger amount? Let's say you have $10,000, euros, pounds in savings. And I recently had a consultation also with the person, asked me the same question. And it's a good question, right? So do you put all the money now in, knowing that Trump will probably be good for the market and you continue to rise, or do you spread it out? And I always think, or at least I would advise to say it depends on how big is your position. Like if you talk about $100,000, let's say, then to put it all in one go, I think is not the smartest way, right? Now to spread $100,000 over increment of $500 every single week, that will take you way too long to spend the money. So I think take, if it's a big amount and you're willing to invest that amount, let's go back to 10,000, maybe it's more relatable for people. Maybe just split it up to really, as I said, if you have 10,000, maybe make it $500 a week. And then for the next, 20 weeks, that would be 5 months, you can spread it out. And then definitely you will have sometimes when you buy on the higher side, sometimes on the lower side. And as I said, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. But I'm not a big fan of lump sum, a huge amount investing, because technically you're trying to time the market, right? You're thinking that now is a good time to buy, which it may not be, right? And so, I would just spread it out, chop up the big amount that you have over, depending on how much time you want to give yourself. Maybe spread it out over 1 year is maybe too long, but over a couple of months, I think it might be a sensible approach. Welcome to Porto. Never been to Porto, only been to Lisbon and Algarve, so I need to come to Porto one day as well. So definitely. Once again, a lot of interest for Neverless. They need to catch up on tax declarations and so forth. So a lot of things I think they need to work on. It has great potential. They want to be like the new Revolut for crypto. Let's see if it works out or not. As I said, right now I pulled my funds from there, but let's see. I'm happy to come back, right? Like the same what I did with Nexo, right? When the markets were tough and there was a lot of volatility, Bitcoin prices was down, I was pulling pretty much all of my Bitcoin and the crypto holdings off Nexo because it was just too uncertain. But now that we're in a strong position, I know that Nexo is doing well, they're making money, so I'm comfortable leaving more of my funds there. Not all of my funds, but definitely much more. So I think it's very dynamic, and it's funny when sometimes people say, but Kai, you said Nexo is not trustworthy and you put your funds away, why you move it now? We live in a dynamic world, right? Things change, and I openly talk about it. As I said, likewise, how I make mistakes, right? I invest in things I shouldn't have, and I learned my lesson from it. And the same is true with tools and so forth. So I'll continue to also try new brokers, close some brokers, or they close me, as we've seen in the Trade Republic. So these things are very dynamic, right? By the way, now that I mentioned Revolut, today I was actually in the gym here in Dubai. Guess who I met? The CEO of Revolut was working out next to me. I was thinking for quite a while, should I approach him or not? Because in the gym is really not nice. But anyway, I said, I'm going to just say hi. And I spoke to him, a couple of words. He didn't seem too chatty. But nevertheless, by the way, wordplay. I said, listen, I'm really looking forward for Revolut to come to the UAE. He smiled, and hopefully it will happen eventually. Okay, guys, I think we're coming up soon on 1 hour. Wow, time is flying here. Victor asking, do you recommend spend money during the month with Nexo card, or should I keep in Revolut? Look, I mean, the Nexo card is interesting, but it depends. A couple of things I don't like about it. I don't want to now divert too much, but in a nutshell, it depends on your loyalty level. So the higher you go, the more benefits you get. I think on the lowest plan, if you don't have too many Nexo tokens, it's not that attractive, the cashback. I think in terms of Bitcoin, it's like tiny. I think even on the platinum level, if you choose to get Bitcoin, it's only 0.5%. So it's 0.5% cashback, which, with Revolut on the Ultra plan with the Pro card, I get 1.2%. With my Wio card, which is only in the UAE, but I get 2% cashback. So it's much better than 0.5%. I think if you choose to get it in Nexo token, it can go all the way to 2%. But keep in mind, you also have, if you travel a lot, if you locally spend only in your native currency, you don't have the FX conversion. But I think they have, I don't remember, if it's 1% or even 2% foreign currency conversion fee as well. So last time I looked at it, because I was considering to do another video on it, and maybe I should make an updated video on the card itself. It wasn't that attractive to me. So again, I don't know which plan you're on Revolut, but I would probably stick with Revolut for the time being. Mohammed, sorry, I just went through it. Maybe you want to rewatch after that. I went through all the markets, but generally very positive. I think we're in a very bullish situation long term, at least for the coming months. Even though I do expect short-term volatility, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few days we see again a bit of a drop. There is, very much excitement post-election right away. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a bit of corrections here and there. But long term, over the next few years, I'm quite bullish with him being the president. And I think the last question for now, how much do you think Tesla will rise now that Elon is good friends with Trump? And do you think Elon will be the next president? Look, as I just mentioned before, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe not in 4 years, because I still think he's too young and is doing too many other things. But if one day he would run for president, I really wouldn't be surprised. The guy is capable of many things, and that could be yet another thing he is doing. So yeah, I think that's a possibility. In terms of Tesla, I also touched on that earlier. Obviously, they jumped a lot in the last few hours because of his support for Trump, let's say, and the favorable policies he's receiving out of this. Also because of Trump's dislike for renewable energy. Which in a way is a conundrum, because obviously Trump is also in the same business, but somebody mentioned, I think he will also talk some sense into him. So I think long-term Tesla will benefit from that relationship for sure. But personally, I would still not invest in the company because I think it's very volatile, very speculative. And I just prefer diversifying into the S&P and the NASDAQ 100. Good. I guess, guys, we're coming up on the 1 hour. I really appreciate everyone dialing in today. Hope it was useful for you, and you stay calm. Don't get too excited. Let's enjoy the green while it's there. But if it's goes down a little bit in red tomorrow, don't freak out. That's really normal. These are markets. They go up, they go down. Continue the dollar cost average and focus once again on things that you can control. Even if you would have wanted the other candidate to win, get off your frustration, that's fine, but then move on with it because you can't change it anyways, right? So focus on yourself, focus on what you can control, continue to invest in yourself and in your portfolio, and things will turn out well. With this, thanks everyone for watching. As always, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you very soon. Ciao.